Carvana went from a stock worth $3.55 to a 12,000% comeback and a seat in the S&P 500. And the short sellers who study it say that $100 billion comeback is a fraud, one run out of the CEO's own father's company. Here's why that should matter to you, even if you have never bought a car online. A company these traders call fake just walked into the index fund inside millions of retirement accounts. Yours might be one of them. So how does a company the whole market left for dead end up worth more than Ford and General Motors put together? And why are some of the sharpest traders on Wall Street betting their own money that it all falls apart? I'll walk you through how the comeback was built and what the short sellers say is rotten under it. Because there are two stories stacked on top of each other here, and one of them is a real comeback, maybe the biggest the stock market has seen in 10 years. The other is a machine the skeptics say prints profit out of thin air. And the strange part is this: from the outside, both of them look exactly the same. To see why the comeback stuns people, you have to see how close Carvana came to dying. Rewind to the end of 2022. The company had spent the boom years buying everything in sight, and its biggest move was a giant car auction network called ADESA, bought for $2.2 billion in cash. That deal, stacked on everything else, pushed Carvana's debt to around $9 billion. Then, used car prices cooled, interest rates jumped, and the money stopped coming in. The stock, once a pandemic darling, fell more than 98% in a single year. On December 7th, it closed at $3.55. That was its lowest price ever. It was also the first time it had gone under $5 since it went public in 2017. Think of a patient who was walking and talking a year ago, now flat on the table. That is where Carvana was. And then it got even worse. The biggest lenders, giants like Apollo and PIMCO, held about $4 billion of its debt, and they signed a pact to act as one block. On Wall Street, that is the exact sound creditors make right before they carve up a firm in bankruptcy. One analyst at Wedbush cut his price target to $1, down from 9, and said the firm would likely go under. So the only question left was how Carvana was going to die. It didn't. Instead, it did the hardest thing in business. It lived, and then it ran. Over the next 3 years, Carvana cut more than $1 billion of debt off its books, stopped trying to grow at any cost, and started squeezing profit out of every single car it sold. The results went from scary to record numbers. And the stock did something that almost never happens after a near-death fall. It didn't just recover, it went straight up. From that low of $3.55, the shares climbed more than 12,000%. A $1,000 bet at the very bottom would have turned into more than 100,000. By the end of 2025, Carvana was worth around $86 billion, bigger than Ford and closing in on General Motors. And in December, it got the biggest prize of all, a seat in the S&P 500, the list of America's biggest companies. The patient hadn't just left the hospital, it had run a marathon on the way out. So the big question is the one that makes people rich or wrong. What is really making all of this money? But the clean comeback story has a snag. Carvana looks like a car company. You buy a used car online and it shows up on a truck, or you pick it up from one of those giant glass vending machines. But selling cars is not where the real money hides. The real engine is the loans. When most people buy a car from Carvana, they also borrow the money for it through Carvana. The firm writes that loan, bundles it up, and sells it to other buyers for a profit. If you have ever financed a car through them, you took one of these loans yourself, maybe without thinking twice about where it went. And the more you look at who sits on every side of those loans, the more one name keeps showing up. And it is not the firms, it's the families. The man who runs Carvana is named Ernie Garcia III, and his father, Ernie Garcia II, is the company's largest shareholder. The father also owns a separate private company called DriveTime, a used car chain and subprime lender. Its collection arm, Bridgecrest, chases down the payments on Carvana's loans. The son runs the public company. The father owns a private one tangled deep in its loans. Money moves between them. And that setup is exactly what a group of short sellers decided to pull apart, one loan at a time. Because that was the comeback story Wall Street bought. A broke company got tough and won. The short sellers say that story is a costume. In January of 2025, a firm called Hindenburg Research put out a report and called the whole turnaround a mirage. Then a second firm, Gotham City Research, went further this year. All of it now points to one date, circled on every trader's calendar, July 29th, when Carvana reports its next numbers, is the first real test of whether the machine still runs or finally jams. So what did they really find inside the loans? Start with who is borrowing. Hindenburg says that almost 44% of the loans Carvana bundles up and sells, around $6.8 billion of them, go to non-prime buyers. That is the polite word for people with shaky credit. In some of the recent batches, the average credit score sat between 567 and 584. In the lending world, that is not just subprime. It is deep subprime. These are the buyers most likely to fall behind. And one former Carvana director told the short sellers something that should make your stomach drop. In his words, he actually approved 100% of applicants. Put that plainly, almost everyone who asked for a loan got one. Now, lending to risky buyers is not a crime. Many of companies do it. The problem is what happens next, on the books. Because Carvana doesn't just make these loans and then wait around to see if people pay them back, it sells them off fast and books the profit right away. And that one move, selling the loan instead of holding it, is where the short sellers say the magic trick lives. The trick works like this. When Carvana sells a loan for more than it lent out, it gets to book that gap as profit at once. That is, before a single monthly payment even comes in. Or a bakery that counts its profit the moment it hands the cake to a cousin, before anyone takes a bite, and before it's even clear the cousin will pay. That is called a gain on sale, and it is totally legal. But the short sellers say Carvana leans on it far too hard. Hindenburg found that over 9 months, these loan sale gains came to $541 million. That is more than double its real net income. Strip out the paper profit from selling loans, and a lot of the comeback shrinks. Gotham City Research put a harder number on it this year. They say ties to the father's company puffed up Carvana's earnings by more than $1 billion across 2023 and 2024. More than $1 billion. And there is a detail from the last crash that hangs over all of it. The father sold about $3.6 billion of his own stock near the last peak. That was right before the shares fell 99%. So insiders this close are selling, and this much profit rests on a paper move. The skeptics started asking the one question that matters. Who is really on the other side of these loan sales? The answer, again and again, points back to drive time and the world around the father. Remember, that is the private company he owns, and its loans and its deals are woven all through Carvana's numbers. Some claims those family ties quietly fuel more than 70% of Carvana's core profit. And this is the part that turns a dry money fight into something darker. Ernie Garcia II, the father at the center of it, pled guilty to bank fraud back in 1990. Prosecutors said he helped a company fake its income through sham deals and signed off on false letters to its auditors. That was 35 years ago, and he served his time. But you can see why the short sellers get nervous. They see loans flowing to the father's own company. They see paper profits. And then they learn the man behind it has that exact history. When Gotham put out its report this January, traders didn't wait around. The stock dropped about 15% in a single day, down to $410 a share. And remember that $1 billion in earnings the skeptics say isn't really there? If they are right, that hole isn't only Carvana's problem anymore. It is sitting inside the S&P 500 index fund in your retirement account. Which brings us all the way back to the one question that really matters. Was Carvana's comeback real, or is it fake? The honest answer is that it's both, depending on which comeback you mean. Comeback in the stock is real, full stop. If you bought at $3.55 and held on, you made a fortune. That 12,000% run happened. What is in doubt is the other comeback, the one in the profits. Is Carvana a truly fixed company that got lean and won? Or is a big slice of its profit just a loop that runs through the CEO's father? On paper, it looks like income. It might really be money moving from one family pocket to another. Here is what is fair to say. These are claims, not proven facts. Carvana flatly denies them, calling the reports false and misleading, and no court or regulator has found the firm guilty of anything. Sellers also make money when a stock falls, so they are not neutral judges. But their reports are detailed, they are on the record, and the company has not answered them line by line. That is why July 29th matters so much. The headline profit is not the number that counts. What counts sits buried under it. How much of that profit still leans on selling loans and on the father's company? That one answer settles the whole fight. Either Carvana is the comeback of the decade, or it is the biggest unraveling of the decade. 3 years ago, this company was a $3 stock the whole market had left for dead. Today, it sits in the same index as Apple and Coca-Cola, and two short sellers say the whole return is a magic trick. Both of those things are true at the same time. That tension is the entire story. You might already own a piece of it and not even know it. So watch what the number does on July 29th, because that is when the story either holds or breaks. This is The Money Story, where we follow one company at a time all the way to the moment the truth shows up on the books. I'll be here when Carvana's does.